Joining us now, Brigham Tomko, reporter for Deseret News, a local news outlet based in Utah. Brigham, thanks for joining us. You just interviewed Charlie Kirk last month. What did you learn about him?
Well, like you mentioned, Charlie Kirk is known for his campus debate videos that go viral. Last year, he got 15 billion views across social media platforms. And what surprised me meeting him at his Phoenix headquarters, where there's 6 buildings devoted to this youth outreach, was that his focus was less on the political and more on the individuals and the institutions. And what I mean by that is his vision is much broader than just the next election cycle. He said that Turning Point was created to build institutions that rival the kind of organizations like Harvard and New York Times and tech companies. And he said that his immediate goal isn't to provoke his political opponents, but rather to persuade young potential conservative voters to live more conservative lifestyles.
You wrote in your piece that Kirk's legacy will be, quote, making conservatism cool again, not just by winning elections, but by influencing behaviors. Expand on that for us. What do you think his stamp will be on the conservative movement there in Utah and beyond?
Sure. Well, for those who only know him from 1 or 2 viral clips that they've seen on Instagram or TikTok, they might not know that the majority of time he spends in his books that he's written, often on his podcasts and at his youth events, is spent helping young people or almost mentoring young people on what they can do in their 20s, in their young adult years, to form a family, to become financially self-independent. And that was actually his emphasis much of the time, apart from partisan politics.
Based on what he told you, what did he think his impact would be?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Something that he told me is that his impact would be measured by the number of young people who consider him a hero, or maybe who just like to watch his videos, make those real life changes to go back to church or get married or have children or take their faith seriously. And so by those metrics, it would be harder to measure his success. And so I think he would be looking, to some of those statistics that might take longer to show up as far as the country turning in that direction.
We know he visited college campuses across the country. What brought Kirk to this campus, do you think? What kind of message would people turning out expect to hear?
Yeah. It had been a few years since he had come to Utah. Last year, he visited over 60 campuses, spent 200 hours debating college students. And for his first stop on the America Comeback Tour this fall, he chose Utah Valley University and Utah State University at the end of the month. And we saw 3,000 students showing up, the vast majority cheering him on like some sort of rock star or celebrity. And so I think what he expected to debate or talk about was a feeling that there has been some sort of shift among young voters. And we saw that in the exit polls after the 2024 election, where conservatism may have become cool again. And so I think it was more of a moment of celebration for him, as opposed to one of polemics or, just pure debate.
You weren't there at yesterday's event on the campus, but several of your colleagues were, and I read a number of their reports. So chilling. What have you heard from them about what happened and how are they doing?
Yeah, and so this really is a somber moment for the newsroom. Utah is a pretty peaceful place. Orem is known for its public safety. Orem is the location of Utah Valley University where the shooting happened. And so my colleagues who were there were just totally gutted and have told me that every time they close their eyes, they see the scenes of Charlie Kirk slumping over because they were just feet away from him. And so it really is a pretty serious and heavy feeling here, especially for a state that has emphasized disagreeing better and peacemaking and taking an approach to conservative politics that elevates as opposed to tears down.
Well, our thoughts are with your colleagues. Certainly hope they're okay. It was traumatic, I'm sure. Brigham Tomko, thank you very much for joining us and shining light.